Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Another happy landing.
Soon, the galaxy will be remade. The Jedi and the Republic will die.
I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi.
Great care we must take.
Why would anyone walk away from being a Jedi? We were trained to be keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
We clones have mixed feelings about the war. Without it, we wouldn't exist.
All part of the plan. The plan. Everything is about to change. Every choice made has led to this.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh. And it is just you and me today. It's us hanging out in the Escape Pod, chatting a bit of Star Wars news. We don't normally chat Star Wars news on this show, not a whole lot, but you know, there's not a crazy amount of things to talk about these days. And not to call this a filler episode or anything, but you know, we're just going to be burning some time and you know, putting out another episode for you guys to listen to for the week and whatnot. So going forward, you know, it might not be a weekly thing, but as you know, we are continuing our series with Diego, watching Clone Wars in chronological order. Speaking of Clone Wars, we will be chatting about the Clone Wars Legacy, what's unofficially known as the Clone Wars Season 7, or officially just the return of Star Wars: The Clone Wars on Disney+. And we will be getting into a little bit of minor news surrounding the Kenobi series, the Battlefront 2 update and the delay of the Kenobi series as well. And that's about all I can think about. So let's get into the the itty bitty things. Resistance has wrapped up. Resistance Season 2 ended on a better note than it started. And that season will be available on Disney Plus later this month, in February 21st or 27th. I forget what it is. It's kind of in that week. And the first season is already available there. So if you've been following Resistance on Disney XD, you'll know exactly what happened. If you have not been following on Disney XD and you've been solely relying on Disney Plus, that finale is coming to you very soon. And as we know, that will be the last of that show. I personally am not going to miss it too much. It was good for the little kids, but yeah, I mean, I think it's the most disposable part of the Star Wars canon so far. I can't say that it was incredibly gripping or anything like that. In fact, I'm even surprised that they were able to secure Oscar Isaac for the few voiceovers that he gave. So, yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is. It's a meh kind of show. I didn't never looked forward to it. Similar to like, it's nowhere in comparison to Rebels or especially not Clone Wars. So a complete different audience. But hey, it's Star Wars. I watched the whole thing, and if you're out there watching Resistance, you'll be able to finish it very soon on Disney Plus. So, speaking, just a side note, those ships in Resistance, actually made it into episode 9. It's kind of cool. Like there was some resources or some sources online confirming that those ships made it into that final battle. They're in amongst the chaos of all those ships flying around. So that's just interesting to know. It's just kind of cool. Even though it's not my favorite show, it is nice to see the connections between all the different parts of canon. So I do appreciate that. But let's move on to Kenobi series. The Kenobi series was delayed. If you've been following the headlines, if you've not been following the headlines, I'm sorry to break it to you, but the Kenobi series scripts are going through a bit of a rewrite, and there's a lot of people over the internet freaking out about this. But I wanted to play a source that I grabbed off YouTube, and it's the man EWAN MCGREGOR talking about this series himself and the delay, and just giving an update on the reality of the situation. So let's just take a listen to that.
It's not been put on hold, it's just been pushed back a little bit, just for scripts, and the scripts are excellent and they just want them to be better, and so we just pushed it back. But it's very dramatic, it would seem online, like there's all kinds of online about it, but it's only just slid back a bit. But we're still shooting it. I still think it'll still be aired when it was meant to be, and I'm really excited about it. It'll be fun to play again.
All right, so there you go. A lot of stuff online about it, and it is what it is. Don't believe what you read about it. I mean, it's no big deal. This will not affect, or this is supposed to not affect the initial launch date at all. This is just a little bit of reworking, and I would not be surprised if this rewrite process has something to do with the amazing, astounding reviews of The Mandalorian. There's a lot of people who loved the tone of that show, and it's very likely that that could be a part to play in the reason for these rewrites. Perhaps they realized the child was more popular than they thought. The comical value was a little more than they anticipated, in a positive way, and perhaps they might be trying to work something in to the Kenobi series. I can imagine that series being very dark and gritty and a little depressing. I mean, as a guy who's been watching over Luke on the desert planet for many, many years, I don't see him leaving that planet, honestly. If he does, that would be pretty cool. If you were a big EU guy or girl who did a lot of reading back in the day when the Last of the Jedi series was coming out, that was I believe that was that 10 books? I forget. Last of the Jedi. Oh, let's look this up. Last of the Jedi books published by Scholastic. If you're in North America, maybe another publisher if you're elsewhere. I'm not entirely sure. But Star Wars: The Last of the Jedi, written by Jude Watson, was the third series that Jude Watson had written. She also wrote the Jedi Quest series and the Jedi Apprentice series, going backwards in time there. And she also wrote a very thick book, two of them. One of them called Secrets of the Jedi, and one of them called what was it called? The Fate of the Jedi or something. I'm blanking on that one, but it was, or Legacy of the Jedi, I think it was. So Legacy and Secrets of the Jedi were her kind of tie-ins to kind of thread those three stories together, and it was really cool. The Last of the Jedi started off with Obi-Wan as kind of a main character, and he goes back and he finds Ferrus Olin, who's a character in Jedi Quest, who was kind of a rival to Anakin Skywalker as a child. And at one point, and he gets thrown out of the Order, very similar to Ahsoka. And interestingly enough, that entire process, it kind of drove him away, of course. But Obi-Wan seeks him out after the Jedi Purge and Order 66 and all that, Obi-Wan kind of looks at him as a bit of a hopeful character to be able to come back and do what he can't, because he is, watching over Luke, and he doesn't have the time or the ability to stop the Empire or take action against the Empire at all, or Vader or anything, right? So it is a really cool book series back then, but it's one of those things that's like, I wonder what they'll do with it. I mean, like, this is a guy that's like living in solitude, so I wonder if the Mandalorian has anything to do with the rewrites. I'm not too sure, but that's just my speculation. Alternatively, there are whispers that Kathleen Kennedy could be stepping down as the chairman. So it is also a possibility that whoever is coming in, whether temporarily or permanently to fill her seat, it is a possibility that they could be the ones kind of whispering behind the scenes at this moment in time, before the company has any big announcements to make. It could be them responsible for these rewrites as well. So we don't know. I mean, it is kind of mind-blowing to me that almost any Star Wars project that Lucasfilm under Disney has done has undergone some sort of pushback or rewrite at some point in time. It is inevitable in the film industry. This happens, but and Star Wars gets a little more press than the average, but it is kind of shocking at how many production faults they've actually undergone over the last 5 years or so. It's kind of crazy, but hey, it is what it is. So moving on to the Battlefront 2 update. If you're a huge fan of Battlefront 2, you'll know that the next update was supposed to come out this past week, and it did not. It's now delayed until the first week of February, and it's adding a few heroes, BB-8 and BB-9E, and maybe a few other little tweaks and bits that will make the gameplay a little more balanced, a little more better, updated, whatever. You follow that news. I don't really have to do too much to say on it, but it's some news. So I'm just throwing it out there. Battlefront 2 update coming very soon, and that'll be arriving hopefully first week of February. So that is all for kind of the news aspect of things. And now I just really want to talk to you guys about Clone Wars. All right, so Clone Wars returns to Disney Plus very, very soon. We're all super stoked, and that is coming. I believe it's February 27th, I want to say, or oh man, did I forget? There is a countdown on StarWars.com. If you go to StarWars.com right now, you will see a very cool little clock countdown to the release on February 21st. There we go. 19 days away, 23 hours, 5 minutes, and 20 seconds from the very moment I'm recording this episode. And I'm sure it'll be even less as soon as you hear me. So that is super exciting. And we're going to be chatting all about Clone Wars, the final season. It's not called Season 7. It's called Star Wars The Clone Wars, the final season. That's officially the title on not only the poster, but on a few areas on the website. Just Clone Wars, the final season. So it's cool that it's. I love the fact that it's coming back. It's bittersweet because not only is it a dream come true to have the show coming back, but we're getting the end of the show that was originally supposed to be 8 seasons. And as you know, if you've been following the show, you'll know that there are 6 seasons available, and the 6th season is not even a full-length season. It's a half season. The remaining bits of that season were incomplete, not finished. They were released online later on as part of the Clone Wars Legacy project. And if you do not remember or know what the Clone Wars Legacy project, I'll tell you a little bit about that. But I really want to just kind of overhaul, explain what happens kind of after the Clone Wars ended, from where we'd left off, and kind of go up until where we are kind of taking off again for this Clone Wars final season. So like, what did we miss out on? What wasn't finished, kind of what wasn't made, all that stuff. So we're going to be chatting about that. So the Clone Wars Legacy is it's what they called a multimedia project, which included comics, books, and story reels. If you don't know what an animatic story reel is, it's basically kind of like previs. It's an animated version of the episode with audio, but not final anything. Like the animation is like, the voices are there, all the dialogue's there. The characters kind of float around without walking as a placeholder to kind of, visualize to the director. It's like, okay, here's these characters in the scene. This is where they're standing. This is the camera angle that we're shooting at, all that stuff. There's no intense action whatsoever. It's very, very janky. In fact, there's some parts where it looks quite funny because it's, it's not even animated. It's 3D objects that are kind of floating around and interacting in space to kind of, put out the idea of like where everything's supposed to be for the animators when they actually do animate the shot. So the cool part about the story reels, though, is that the dialogue is all there, and some of the music, sometimes the odd sound effect or there, here or there. So it's nice that you get to kind of, explore the story even though it's not finished, and it's better than nothing, honestly. But some of the story reels were very popular with people, and I think they took that into consideration when making this final season. So that being said, we'll start at the very beginning where Clone Wars left off. The very last arc we had in the Clone Wars. Spoiler if you have not seen the show. If you've not seen the Clone Wars show, probably tune out for the rest of this episode. Otherwise, bear with us here. Was the arc where Yoda kind of discovers immortality and discovers how to communicate with those who have passed away, like Qui-Gon Jinn. They brought Liam Neeson back in for voiceovers of his own character, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Yoda met as the priestesses of the Force that go into this huge, incredible, this incredible arc. About the deeper sides of the Force and all that. So that's really cool. But the Clone Wars Legacy project kind of begins immediately after that, and it's unclear whether or not this is kind of the actual order of how we would have had things going on. But if you want to take a look at the chronological order of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, you can go to starwars.com /news/star-wars-clone-wars-chronological-episode order. A bit of a long URL there, or just Google search Clone Wars chronological order. And there is a blog there, which they have recently updated. Interestingly enough, because this blog was published March 17th, 2014, and since then they have gone back, re-edited the entire blog and they've added the official trailer for the final season, and they have removed a lot of the Clone Wars Legacy content that used to be tacked on to the end of this list, which is very interesting because the list hasn't changed at all. The list, well, actually, the formatting of the list has changed, but the episodic order is there in order of how to watch the show top to bottom. And the very last episode being season 6, episode 13, Sacrifice, which is number 121 on the list. They also have a link to stream on Disney Plus. If you go down the list, you can, follow along kind of thing. So it's interesting to me that they took this stuff off. And I don't think it's a matter of decanonizing anything. It's just their way of making it less confusing for people who do watch the show and don't get into the additional material. And that's fine. But that's why we're having this chat, just so that you can actually catch up on this stuff. So number one is when they released these story reels, there was a couple arcs that they did. So, finish off with Yoda's arc in season 6. The remaining episodes of season 6, from my conclusion of how these episodics were released as story reels, was a 4-part arc called The Crystal Crisis on Utapau, another arc called Bad Batch, or the Bad Batch arc. That was also another 4 episodes. That's 8 episodes. And we got 13 in season 6. So, I mean, if you count upwards from that, you have a full-length season. So that to me is the most logical conclusion of these story reels is that this was the remaining bits of season 6. And the Bad Batch arc in particular is being completed and fully reanimated for this final season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. So the Bad Batch arc, even though it's a part of season 6, we will be getting it as a part of this final season, which unofficially is called, unofficially people are calling it season 7, but it's not season 7. It's just the final season. So, it was a part of season 6. So we had the Crystal Crisis on Utapau, featuring episodes called A Death on Utapau, In Search of the Crystal Crisis, and The Big Bang. So going down the list here, A Death on Utapau was Obi-Wan and Anakin investigate a mysterious death of a Jedi Master on Utapau and uncover a secret Separatist weapons deal, the likes of which they have never seen before. So that's the premise of that episode. In Search of the Crystal, Obi-Wan and Anakin's investigation on Utapau continues, and they allow themselves to be captured by weapon dealers who possess a focusing crystal of unspeakable power. The Crystal Crisis episode is, again, Obi-Wan and Anakin must escape from Utapau with a Kyber crystal, which is the crystal they referred to in the last episode's premise. So they discover there's this giant Kyber crystal. So they must escape Utapau with the Kyber crystal before General Grievous and his droid army track them down. And the final episode, called The Big Bang, is Obi-Wan and Anakin must do all they can to prevent a powerful weapon from falling into General Grievous's hands. So that just kind of wraps up that arc. But it was really cool. Like, it pulled at strings from, if you read the books, Rogue One Catalyst, it kind of like had a lot of reminiscent, parallels there. And it was hinting at the fact that even during the Clone Wars, this plot to build the Death Star, which is, Palpatine's plan. We saw the hologram that Dooku was holding in Attack of the Clones way at the beginning of the Clone Wars. And here we are, Obi-Wan and Anakin finding one of the crystals that it will be used to power the Death Star's laser weapon. So at this point in time, as we know, we are over halfway past the Clone Wars middle point. We're towards the end of the war. And keep in mind, this show was supposed to be 8 seasons long. So this is near the end of the season 6, and the war is almost over. And as we've seen from Revenge of the Sith, the Death Star, out the viewport of one of those Star Destroyers, was being built in space above Geonosis. And Vader and Palpatine are looking out at the construction of this Death Star and having a good old time. But obviously, this construction started during the Clone War and kept kind of away from sight, away from view. and I believe that's also touched up on in Catalyst as well. But yeah, that's the Crystal Crisis on Utapau. So theoretically, that could have been season 6, episode 14, 15, 16, and 17. Then we had the Bad Batch arc. So the Bad Batch, A Distant Echo, On the Wings of Kiridax, and Unfinished Business. Those are the 4 episodes of the Bad Batch arc. Now, I'm not going to go over these because for those of you who are wanting to see the final product of these episodes, I'm going to save it for when we actually see the final season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. But just be aware of the fact, if you have access to watch these story reels, give them a watch, because I'm very curious to see how much they change. There are some things that they obviously have changed about the original ending of The Clone Wars. They've kept it very close, but there are some things they changed. I know Ahsoka's blue lightsabers were not originally part of the plan. If you've read the Ahsoka novel, which I will get into in a little bit, it's very clear that that is not originally part of the plan. It's she still had her green lightsabers. So yeah, just a side mention that, but that would have been the remaining episodes of season 6. So there you have it. Season 6 wrapped up with half a season and the 2 story reel arcs, and I'm pretty sure that would have been the remaining episodes of season 6. So what we had left as far as content that we could digest were scripts that were then adapted into stories. March 2016, Pablo had stated that there were 13 story arcs left over after the release of the 6th season. And the first draft scripts had been for season 7 and 8 prior to the series cancellation. So it is interesting that some of this stuff we did get, some of it we didn't get. There was, just to squeeze in this little thing here, we had a book called Dark Disciple that came out. Dark Disciple is probably one of my favorite Star Wars books of all time. It's written by Christy Golden, stars Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Voss. It's a novel that adapted 8. It was an 8-part story arc, scripted from the fully produced scripts, I'm assuming, but it was adapted from that. So this novel basically contains 8 episodes of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And just a run through the episode titles here, starting with what I would imagine might have been the season 7 premiere, would have been called Lethal Alliance, The Mission, Conspirators, Dark Disciple, Saving Voss Part 1, Saving Voss Part 2, Traitor, and The Path. So those are 8 episodes, all included in the Dark Disciple novel, all probably a part of season 7. And sadly, we never got to see those on screen. But I will read you the synopsis for the book, just to kind of cover the overall arc that would have, that happens in those episodes. So the opening crawl is: for years, the galaxy-wide conflict known as the Clone Wars has raged. The struggle between the rightful government of the Galactic Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Systems has claimed the lives of untold billions. The Force-wielding Jedi for millennia, the guardians of peace in the galaxy, have been thwarted at nearly every turn by the Separatists and their leader, the Sith Lord Count Dooku. With the war showing no sign of ending and the casualties mounting each day, the Jedi must consider every possible means of defeating their cunning foe, whether some means are too unthinkable and some allies too untrustworthy, has yet to be revealed. So the paperback has that's the opening crawl. The paperback on the back of the novel says, oh, sorry, I'll read the hardcover. That's the one. That one's a little longer. In the war for control of the galaxy between the armies of the dark side and the Republic, former Jedi Master turned ruthless Sith Lord Count Dooku has grown ever more brutal in his tactics. Despite the powers of the Jedi and the military prowess of their clone army, the sheer number of fatalities is taking a terrible toll. And when Dooku orders the massacre of a flotilla of helpless refugees, the Jedi Council feels it has no choice but to take drastic action, targeting the man responsible for so many war atrocities, Count Dooku himself. But the ever-elusive Dooku is dangerous prey for even the most skilled hunter. So the Council makes a bold decision to bring both sides of the Force's power to bear, pairing brash Jedi Knight Quinlan Vos with infamous one-time Sith acolyte Asajj Ventress. At this point in time, Asajj Ventress is a bounty hunter. She's reached that point in her story arc. Though Jedi distrust for the cunning killer who once served at Dooku's side still runs deep, Ventress's hatred for her former master runs deeper. She's more than willing to lend her copious talents as a bounty hunter and assassin to Vos's quest. Together, Ventress and Vos are the best hope for eliminating Dooku as long as the emerging feelings between them don't compromise their mission. But Ventress is determined to have her retribution and at last let go of her dark Sith past, balancing the complicated emotions she feels for Vos with the fury of her warrior spirit. She resolves to claim victory on all fronts, a vow that will be mercilessly tested by her deadly enemy and her own doubt. So that's a better coverage of kind of what that arc is about. It is a very emotional book. Beautifully written, and it makes me sad to think that we never got this on screen. But so moving kind of down from there, we also had a comic book which adapted 4 scripts, and this was the Star Wars Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir comic. I'm assuming this would have been part of season 8 as well, or sorry, no, season 7. Sorry, not season 8, season 7. And the episode titles would have been The Enemy of My Enemy, A Tale of Two Apprentices, Proxy War, and Showdown on Dathomir. So this would have brought the season 7 episode count that we've now got adapted up to 12 episodes. So that makes the remaining episodes of season 6 out there as story reels. We got half of season 7 as a novel and a comic book. I'm not going to get into what the comic book's about. Basically, as you know from the show so far, Palpatine confronts Savage Opress and Maul on Mandalore, kills Savage Opress, and takes Maul prisoner. And the last we see of him in the cartoon, in the show, is him just lightning, force lightning Maul on the ground as he's screaming in agony. So that was a major cliffhanger for the fact that this show never wrapped. And then for a lot of people, he popped up in Solo, and then everyone's like, what? Like, what the heck? A lot of people didn't even watch Clone Wars before watching Solo, so they were even more confused. And then we have his kind of finale in Star Wars Rebels, but there's a huge chunk kind of missing from when he is being tortured by Palpatine on Mandalore, and kind of the rise that he has after. It's like, what happened in between? This comic covers that entire arc. It's a 4-episode arc of him in the clutches of Palpatine and what follows after, and his kind of rise to power on Mandalore, as we kind of saw him last before he lost his little battle with Palpatine. A Tale of Two Apprentices, the 2nd episode, just a side note, really cool episode. Puts him face to face with Dooku, who is the current apprentice of Palpatine. So yeah, it's an awesome little bit of comic miniseries there, and published, the last that Dark Horse published actually before they lost the license, and the only Star Wars piece of canon that Dark Horse actually has to claim. Marvel has been republishing this book under their own license, but it is still got the Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir title to it, and the same cover with Maul on the front with the Darksaber and 2 Mandalorians behind him. So don't be mistaken. Don't be going out of your way to look for the Dark Horse version. The Marvel has published this as one of their own at this point, and it is a part of canon. I see some Spanish Legends covers out there with the Legend banner, which is very odd because it actually is not Star Wars Legends. This is Star Wars canon and a part of the Clone Wars. So again, now we're at the halfway count in season 7, and we've had the novel and now this comic. This is when it gets a little bit more diced up. We kind of have to go back to all the Star Wars celebrations in the past and take a look at interviews with Dave Filoni and the Clone Wars crew, sharing little bits and pieces and stuff from what wasn't produced at all. Now we're getting into the stuff that you cannot actually, consume. And that begins with the Bounty Hunter arc. So assuming that this is also part of season 7, there was going to be a 4-episode arc written about Boba Fett and Cad Bane. They were going to team up on a rescue mission on Tatooine where Tusken Raiders had kidnapped a child. It would emphasize Boba and Cad's relationship to one another, as Cad had known Jango Fett. The story would have heavily influenced the film, The Searchers, which George Lucas really likes, apparently. I'm grabbing this off the wiki page, by the way. Aura Singh would have been in it. Sarah Pass, C21 High Singer, Embo, Lats Razzie, and Bosk, all characters that we've seen before in the show. So that's really cool. Basically, just a return of all those bounty hunters that we've seen through various parts of season 2 and season 5, I believe. Cad Bane has a new outfit in this arc, a new ship, and a Tusken shaman would have appeared, I guess. Not too sure what that's supposed to mean, but so this clip, it was a clip revealed from Celebration Orlando in 2017, where Cad Bane and the other bounty hunters ended up with something was going on. Basically, Cad Bane and Boba Fett, assuming that this was the last episode of this 4-part arc, Cad Bane and Boba Fett reach kind of a misunderstanding or a bit of a confrontation with each other. They butt heads, and they kind of have a bit of a cowboy standoff in which Boba Fett wins naturally, and then kills Cad Bane, henceforth becoming the galaxy's greatest bounty hunter that you kind of see him as in the original trilogy. But that all starts with killing off this other galaxy-wide known bounty hunter at the time of the Clone Wars, which was Cad Bane. Prior to him, it was Jango Fett. So it's a bit of an interesting kind of lineage. And also, as we know, Cad Bane to have this really Western cowboy culture to him, as a mentor to Boba Fett through the first 3 episodes, would have rubbed off on him. And that's kind of why we see Boba Fett as this super high-techy guy, sporting all the armor that his dad had once worn, but he's got this Western flair. And it's like, where did that come from? It's not from living on Tatooine all these years. No, this is because Cad Bane had quite an influence on Boba's life, it turns out. And he was almost somewhat of a bit of a mentor to him at one point in his life. And I'm sure that's why he now bears the spurs. So that was really cool. It also would have explained, sorry, I missed this part. It would have explained the dent in Boba's helmet. This is kind of the standoff that gives Boba his infamous dent on the helmet, which would have been from Cad Bane's blaster. So that would have been super cool to see. The next arc is Ahsoka's Walkabout, 4-episode arc again, with following up on Ahsoka after her decision to leave the Jedi Order. So now at this point, we're like halfway through season 7 or more, actually. And the last time we saw her was at the end of season 5, I guess it was, which is pretty crazy because that's a long time to go in the show without her. But she comes back, and this arc is about her first adventures in the underworld, where she meets a scoundrel named Nix Okami. who she develops a close relationship with. And Ahsoka's character is challenged when she gets involved with the underworld and the Pike Syndicate, and she has to resist her Jedi teachings for her own safety, all that stuff. So this arc is rumored to be a part of the new final season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. They finished this arc fully animated, and I believe they also adapted some stuff and changed some things. So the character of Nix Okami no longer exists. Apparently, he has been replaced. He used to be a young mechanic guy, and possibly a bit of a love interest. They've changed that now. Apparently now it is a female character, and I'm not too sure what the relationship status is with her. I think she's a friend or something like that. But yeah, Ahsoka's Walkabout arc is rumored to be a part of this final season. There would have been another arc, another 4-episode arc. Sorry. Hold on. Let's just do the tally here for a second. Season 7. Okay, 8 episodes with the Dark Disciple, 4 episodes with the Maul. 16 now with the Bounty Hunter arc, 20 with Ahsoka's Walkabout. It might have ended there. So now we're getting into season 8 territory. There is a 4-episode arc, possibly season 8, about Kashyyyk and Yoda and the Bad Batch going to Kashyyyk. Another kind of Untold Clone Wars panel at Celebration Anaheim, where Dave Filoni was talking about the plot of the arc. He revealed the characters would ride on giant ape lizards that were holy to the Wookiees. In one scene, Tarful would ask the tree spirits for permission to go into battle against the enemy, which was a Trandoshan and the Separatist Alliance. To get the enemy out of their city, they would have to burn some of the trees. The clones had no problem with it, but it was upsetting the Wookiees. As part of the arc, it would have been about the clones and the Wookiees finding common ground to fight the Separatists, which, as we know, gets followed up in Revenge of the Sith, where we see the continuation and the struggle of that battle that the Wookiees are needing reinforcements with, which is why Yoda goes back having a pre-developed and good relationship with the Wookiees, as he says. So, parts of the 4 episodes of this arc were made into animatics before the series was canceled, which is pretty crazy because a story reel clip was shown, and I never actually saw it. It might be on YouTube floating around somewhere on the internet, but Dave Filoni revealed at Celebration Europe 2 that Yoda would be in the arc to give credit to that line that I just talked about, good relations with the Wookiees I have. And the arc would have contained some references to the holiday special. Surprise there. So there's another arc about Rex and R2, very Top Gun style. Dave Filoni has a bit of a quote here. He says, "This was Top Gun with clones. It was basically the army clones. The ground forces got in an argument with the pilots, and their astromechs got in an argument. R2 insulted the astromech, and it became this thing where Rex ended up having to fly a fighter with R2 as his co-pilot." So kind of cool. Brent Friedman wrote the script for this 4-part arc. Brent is a great writer on the Clone Wars, wrote some of the best stories out there. And this story would have been about Rex and R2. And a reprogrammed B2 super battle droid that they would grow attached to. At some point, Rex is injured and yada yada. So, yeah, really cool stuff. Again, that's, if you want to read a little more up to that, that's not as widely accessible because it's not something we can actually consume, but it's something there. It's not a crazy lengthy arc, but the next thing, so assuming that the Rex and R2 Top Gun arc would have been maybe 2 to 4 episodes, that brings our season 8 count up to what is it, like between 6 and 8 episodes at this point. So moving on from there, furthermore into season 8, we would have had an episode about Yuzhan Vong, which is kind of crazy, but a story that would have involved Yuzhan Vong in a very minimal way. It's a scout ship that's trying to assess the strength of the Republic and what the Jedi were doing and what they were and everything like that. So it would have been a really creepy story, like X-Files. That's what Pablo kind of talks about it as. to better align with George Lucas's description of the Force. The Vong did not have any Force immunity in this story. Pablo said that the story never got into the origins of the Vong, but that they were probably from another galaxy. So that's kind of cool. We would have another little thing about Return to the Jedi. So this story would have been about what lays beneath the Jedi Temple, which in other pieces of canon have been confirmed to be a Sith shrine, which is kind of beneath the Jedi Temple and almost acting like a cancer. Like as the war grows on and the dark side gets stronger, there's literally this Sith shrine sitting beneath the Jedi Temple. Like this is amazing. Like such a cool story to me. This would have involved Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and Anakin set out to rescue Master Yoda from this Sith shrine. And Ahsoka basically comes back to warn them about what she's discovered in the underworld of Coruscant as she's still down there, as we know from the season 7 arc ish, which was called Ahsoka's Walkabout. So she comes back and warns the Jedi, hey, there's this thing underneath the Jedi Temple. You've got to see this. And then Yoda gets sucked into that as a problem, and Anakin and Obi-Wan have to rescue him. It would have also featured Darth Sidious trying to break into the holocron vault of the Jedi Temple. Is interesting enough because he sent Cad Bane to do that exact thing in season 2. So now he's trying to do it himself. But Ahsoka would have hindered his progress. So it's very likely that Ahsoka, without actually seeing Sidious, Dave Filoni has released a sketch from his notepad of Ahsoka on the other side of a wall from Sidious, and all she's trying to do is block this lightning coming through at her, and she doesn't know who's on the other side, but she knows it's something dark and dangerous. And man, that would have been super cool. Really cool to see. So again, that's part of season 8. Return to Mon Cala. We would have gone back to Mon Cala, and Padme and Anakin would have returned there to see King Lee Char once again. And they would have found out that the Quarren Nosor Ree, who was a primary character in that arc we had at Mon Cala before in season 4, he's been murdered. And the Teeks, which are Teeks, he's a character. He's a Quarren senator. It says here, would have been appointed provisional leader in the palace, and Padme hopes to gain support from the Quarren to remove Palpatine from office. So here we get the very early stages of the deleted scene that would have been in Revenge of the Sith. You can watch it online. Deleted scenes from Revenge of the Sith. There's a bit of an early rebellion moment where Padme and Bail Organa and Mon Mothma all have this conversation about the government at the time and their concerns about Palpatine and whatnot. I believe Palpatine came up, but Padme here is during the Clone Wars trying to get support from the Quarren to remove Palpatine from office, which is very cool because at this point in time, it's obvious that she disagrees with the war and realizes that Palpatine is not doing anything to help this war or the Republic. And she knows something's up. And that is very interesting because she brings this up to Anakin out of the blue. In Revenge of the Sith, she goes like that little line when they're sitting on the couch. She says, "Have you ever thought that we're fighting, that we're on the wrong side, that we're fighting this war and we're actually the very thing that we're trying to fight." She has something along those lines that she says, and Anakin's basically like, "What? Like, no way!" And you're sounding like a separatist now, and they disagree there, but we see the seeds of that conversation that they have, and those motives that Padme has seeded right here in the Clone Wars towards the end. So that is really cool. That would have been a cool arc. I don't know how long that would have been, but again, we're just getting into the pieces and bits that we have. And finally, this would have been the finale to the show, which is now also the finale of the show, The Siege of Mandalore. This arc is Ahsoka teaming up with Obi-Wan and Anakin, responding to Bo-Katan Kryze cries, alerting the Jedi of Darth Maul's return with the remains of the Shadow Collective. And General Grievous causes a surprise attack and kidnaps Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. And while this whole thing is going on in Mandalore, Anakin and Obi-Wan have to leave and rescue Palpatine. Ahsoka and Captain Rex remain in command of the clones, who paint their armor like Tano's facial markings. Part of this arc was adapted into the prologue of the novel Ahsoka. So I mentioned I would bring this up, and the Ahsoka novel has very few pieces that kind of call back to the duel that she has with Maul on Mandalore, which we've seen in the trailer. The pieces are all coming together now, and and since all of this stuff going on, the season Mandalore will be adapted as part of the Clone Wars revival. So the Clone Wars revival, the final season, really honestly takes bits and pieces of what we have known is coming at us for years, not as a final product, but we've known about the Bad Batch story. We've been able to watch those as story reels. We've known about the Siege of Mandalore from a very kind of distant perspective of these flashbacks in the book Ahsoka, as well as the hinting that Dave Filoni did at Celebration. He released a bit of a sketch that he did in his notebook again, and has that description there is something that they talked about, and very much put heavy influence on the fact that this not only would have been the end of the show, but would have overlapped Revenge of the Sith and brought meaning to the Outer Rim sieges, which is what Anakin and Obi-Wan are coming back from when they come to rescue the Chancellor. And also it explains the disappearance of Rex throughout the entire film, and the disappearance of Ahsoka throughout the entire film. They're literally elsewhere. So that is really cool. And then of course we have the Ahsoka walkabout arc, which is arguably that, and the Siege of Mandalore, arguably they had the like nothing to play around with. The Bad Batch arc had story reels. These other two arcs did not. So these have been done up from scratch, arguably, aside from the rough scripts. But it'll be interesting to see how they tie it up. And I am still hoping that we do get more Clone Wars in the future that might be able to squeeze in between this final season and what we've had so far with that final arc with Yoda, if that makes any sense. I don't know about adapting the adapted stuff, like taking the Dark Disciple novel, for example, and then, animating that. Like, I'm like, you know what? It's almost too late for that. I love the book. I'm happy with the book. I'd be happy if they never touch the stuff that they've released as a comic or a novel or whatever. I'm cool with that. Some of the stuff though that they have little kind of itty bitty comments on, like that Cad Bane Boba Fett arc, or the Yuzan Vong little episode there, or especially that Ahsoka, warning the Jedi about this Sith shrine, and the Yoda on Kashyyyk arc would have been cool. Like, there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff that we didn't get, and it's worth noting all these things prior to going into this new season, just so you know, all this stuff is still considered canon when they did this final season. Like, it's all there. In fact, when they're writing the material for content today, they still take note of what they've done there. It's, even though it's not released to us as a full story, the story group and especially Dave Filoni takes all this stuff, even though it's not fully complete. They take it as major staples to what they're doing right now with the content, and that's almost a way of just future proofing if they ever decide to go back and complete that, right? And it's a good thing that they've been doing that, because look, we're 5-6 years away from when the show is canceled, and here we are returning again to Star Wars: The Clone Wars as the final season premieres on Disney Plus. It's a crazy world we live in, and anything can happen. So here's hoping that we get more of it. Well, thank you again for joining us on Star Wars Escape Pod. I hope all that Clone Wars talk was somewhat interesting to you. I know we don't have a crazy amount of things to talk about these days, but I'll be finding as much as I can to bring up on the show. And we may not be doing it every week. It really depends how much there is to talk about. But stay in touch with us on our Twitter account. We will be updating you with when episodes are coming out, when they're not. And you can follow us at SW Escape Podcast. We do have an email, theescapepod@outlook.com. Shoot us your feedback, questions there. If it's a question that we have time to answer on the show, we'll play your voice memo and be sure to do and answer the best we can. And if it's a group discussion going on, it's perfect because we just feed off each other and that really helps us out. If you want to help us out, though, we don't make any money off this. Shoot this podcast to a friend. Just be like, hey, check this out. It's a good show. It's really cool to see the listener base grow and it's just encouraging going forward as a hobby. We do this show and it's just nice to see that people are listening. Sideshow Collectibles has released the Child's pre-orders. If you want a life-size version of Baby Yoda or the Child, that is up for 476 Canadian or 350 US. I mean, who doesn't want a Baby Yoda in their living room, right? Like, that's a must-have for a Star Wars fan. Anyhow, you're listening to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh. I said that backwards. It's 2 a.m. I just got to get to bed. Good night, guys. May the Force be with you.